jangan komentar sebelum tonton video ini sampai habis ya.
The question now is whether there's any evidence that Muhammad's revelations came from God. This is what I call the argument from literary excellence. The claim here, which we find over and over again in the Quran, is that the Quran is so wonderfully written, it must be from God. So Muhammad's main argument is that the poetry he was delivering was so wonderful, it could only come from God.
One of the main focuses on the miraculous nature of the Quran has been its linguistic inimitability.
Although it is still something that is a challenge that stays until this day, because the Arabic language is a living language. People can still pick up the Quran who speak Arabic and read it and understand it and comprehend it, even though this book is 1,400 years old. You would be very hard pressed. In fact, I don't even know if there is another book like this in the world today. The Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, was not a literate man. He was not a man of letters. That's not what he was known to be. Yet he came with this book, outstanding in its qualities, a masterpiece of literature, unlike which the Arabs had never heard before. And the proof of it, the proof that it was from God to the Arabs, was its eloquence, its mastery of the language.
Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says in Surah Al-Muddathir, وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ. You notice something? It's spelled backwards and forwards the same way. In English literature, we call this a palindrome. Something that spells backwards and forwards the same way, like Bob or race car. That would be a simple translation of وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ. Try to say, declare the greatness only of your Lord in English or French or German or Japanese. You pick the language. Say it so that it spells backwards and forwards the same way. I can translate the ayah, but could I translate the miracle?
All of them knew beyond any doubt when they heard the Quran that it was a miracle from Allah and only a revelation from Allah.
I find it very interesting that this sort of information is in the ancient scriptures of the Holy Quran, and I have no way of knowing where they would come from, but I think it is extremely interesting that they are there and that this work is going on to discover the meaning of some of the passages. Well, I would think it must be the divine being.
Thinking of many of these questions and thinking where Muhammad came from, he was after all a Bedouin. I think it is almost impossible that he could have known about things like the common origin of the universe, because scientists have only found out within the last few years, with very complicated and advanced technological methods, that this is the case. Somebody who did not know something about nuclear physics 1400 years ago could not, I think, be in a position to find out from his own mind, for instance, that the earth and the heavens had the same origin, or many other of the questions that we have discussed here.
Muhammad was a very ordinary man. He couldn't have read, didn't know to write. In fact, he was illiterate. And we're talking about 1,200 years ago. You have someone, a literate person, making profound pronouncements and statements that are amazingly accurate of a scientific nature. And I I personally can't see how this could be a mere chance. There are too many accuracies. And like Dr. Moore, I have no difficulty in my mind reconciling that this is a divine inspiration or revelation which led him to these statements.
Descriptions of the human embryo in the Quran cannot be based on scientific knowledge in the 7th century. The only reasonable conclusion is that these descriptions were revealed to Muhammad from God. Muhammad could not have known these facts about human development in the 7th century because most of them were not discovered until the 20th century. This is a leech, and this is the human embryo, but 23 days. I think you have to agree that the similarity between these structures is amazing. Little was known about the staging and classification of human embryos until the 20th century. For this reason, the descriptions of the human embryo in the Quran cannot be based on scientific knowledge in the 7th century. The only reasonable conclusion is that these descriptions were revealed to Muhammad from God. He could not have known such details because he was an illiterate man with absolutely no scientific training.
It is not surprising, then, that we relook to our Holy Scriptures for help and enlightenment.
terima kasih ya yang sudah tonton video ini sampai habis. Jangan lupa untuk share video ini jika merasa video ini bermanfaat. Cek dan share juga video-video kami yang lainnya ya.